Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to go ahead and get started because we have a nice full program for this evening. I am Rosamond King. I'm the director of the Ethel R. Wolf Institute for the Humanities here at Brooklyn College. And I want to welcome you to the Robert L. Hess Memorial Lecture, which is the centerpiece of the Hess Scholar-in-Residence, generously funded by a gift from the Hess family. I want to begin by reminding us that Brooklyn College sits on unceded territory stolen from the Canarsie and the Nyack people, who are subgroups of the Lenape. And that ongoing theft, along with the stolen blood and work of enslaved Africans, facilitates our presence at Brooklyn College. On behalf of all of us, I pay our respects to the elders past, present, and the ones to come who have stewarded this land. And I also recognize the hundreds of indigenous nations who continue to resist and uphold their cultures. I know that this acknowledgement is neither sufficient nor complete, but it is part of a process of learning to become more thoughtful and more respectful, and to more deeply incorporate Indigenous and Native American cultures, philosophies, and peoples into the curriculum, faculty, student body, and staff of Brooklyn College. And this event and this entire week, which is inspired by student activism, is in line with this mission and with Brooklyn College's mission to provide a transformative, distinctive education to the whole people of New York City. So to kick off the program, I would like to introduce Brooklyn College's president, Michelle Anderson. We're so happy that you're with us this evening.
Thank you so much. Good evening to everyone and welcome. You know, I always look forward to the Robert L. Hess Memorial Lecture. It's become one of the intellectual highlights of the campus, highlights of the academic year for the entire community. This is the first time the lecture is being held in an online format, and we were just talking about this before we started and let people into the Zoom meeting, that actually being in an online format has meant this week that the Hess Memorial Lectures and the whole series of events have reached more people, which I think is just terrific. I really want to congratulate the whole team in the Wolf Institute for carrying on this tradition despite the challenges of this moment in time and the challenges of moving to a different format. The annual lecture and the Scholar-in-Residence Program is possible, as mentioned, because of the Hess family's ongoing gift via an endowment in honor of Brooklyn College President Robert L. Hess. And the Wolf Institute has honored Professor Hess's vision by consistently bringing top scholars to enrich the academic and cultural life of the campus. This year's Robert L. Hess Scholar-in-Residence, Winona LaDuke, is no exception. On Monday, I was able to attend one of her early events this week, and it was absolutely inspiring and very insightful. I'm thrilled to be able to come back and welcome her again to the formal lecture of the week. It's also, I think, important to note that it's inspiring for the students and the faculty to be able to have someone like Winona LaDuke here talking to us. She's such an accomplished activist, advocate, and scholar who has dedicated her life to protecting the environment and helping Indigenous and First Nations peoples. I really want to thank you so much. Is she here now? Or if she's not and she's coming later, you know, please, we will all express our gratitude through this program. I also want to thank, as I close, I want to thank Professor Rosamond King for her efforts in organizing this evening's events and all of the week's events. She has been a terrific director of the Ethel R. Wolf Institute for the Humanities, which is a real center of intellectual, intellectual work on the campus. I see some of the claps and I want to add my claps to them. I really want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and let's move on with it. And I'll turn it back to Professor King. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Anderson. We did produce a program, not in paper, but virtually, and that is online. And so you can follow along with that. We'll put a link in the chat. But next, we have a really wonderful treat for you. Our illustrious Professor Malcolm J. Merriweather, who I saw come in, he is the Brooklyn College Director of Choral Studies and Vocal Coordinator. And he worked with us to handpick this evening's musical selection and our performer. So here is Elena Ruiz, who is a student in the Brooklyn College Conservatory of Music and the studio of Professor Jesse Mills, playing Wood That Sings by Muncie Mohican composer Brent Michael Davids. We have no sound, Saklima, so I think you need to hit share sound. And Saklima, if we'll give you another minute, and if you're having technical difficulties, since this is a recording, we can play it later in the program as well.
I just realized it was because I was muted.
One more time. All right, I think we will have the musical performance later. It is wonderful. I have had a chance to see it, and I know that Elena rehearsed for quite some time to do it, so we will definitely have it for you. I want to thank all of the members of the Hess Planning Committee, and their names are in the program. There are too many to mention, who helped put together this week of dynamic events. It was definitely a team effort. And I also want to thank Saklima Roy, who you see here, who is the Wolf Programs Manager and who has done the majority of the behind the scenes work to make this week happen, along with our colleagues in the Office of Communications and the Office of Information Technology. And of course, I want to thank Winona LaDuke. Last year, we had the first Latino Studies scholar and the first Latino Hess lecturer, and in Jose David Salvador. And I felt we were finally catching up to the 21st century. And this year, with Winona LaDuke as our first Indigenous scholar who is participating in the Hess Scholar-in-Residence Program, I feel like we're catching up with the first century, with a milestone that has really been too long in coming. Winona, you've been not only knowledgeable, but also extremely generous and inspiring as you've talked with our students. And of course, I want to thank our students who've come with wonderful questions and who have done their reading and their watching when they've been asked to by their professors, and who do not yet know their own brilliance. It's always a pleasure to work with you. To bring in the next part of the program, I want to welcome the Chief Academic Officer of Brooklyn College, our Provost, Ann Lopes.
Thank you so much, Rosamond. I'm so delighted to be here and to welcome everyone and to welcome Winona LaDuke. Her work is critical to our world, our nation, and our campus. She addresses environmental, economic, and racial justice issues through the lens of Indigenous studies, and deep advocacy. She brings theory and practice together in the deepest kind of way. Her work speaks to the heart of our anti-racist work at the college and in academic affairs this year. Our faculty are working together to develop a contemporary curriculum that brings anti-racism to the fore. I'm also delighted then to introduce to you Dean Ken Gould, a leader and champion of decolonizing our curriculum in his school and at the college. It is so fitting that I introduce Ken to introduce Winona LaDuke to you.
Thanks, Anne. At this moment of peril to our colonial settler republic, our health, and our planet, we can learn much from the 528 years of continuous Indigenous struggle against imperialism, genocide, and ecocide on this continent. Today's Hess lecture and the week-long residency of Winona LaDuke represents a critical intervention at a critical juncture. When the School of Humanities and Social Sciences began its Decolonizing the Curriculum initiative last year, our first speaker was Dr. Jim Fenelon, a Lakota sociologist and director of the Center for Indigenous Peoples Studies at Cal State San Bernardino. We invited Dr. Fenelon in response to a petition from our students demanding a commitment to Indigenous and Native American studies at Brooklyn College. That petition found a receptive dean. Unbeknownst to the students, I had been working with Indigenous communities on environmental justice issues for decades. I taught on the St. Regis Mohawk Reservation, I worked with the Akwesasne Environmental Task Force, and I had been the advisor to my former institution's Native American student organization. So I was all in. The School of Humanities and Social Sciences supported the formation of a Native American and Indigenous Studies working group. And that group has hosted numerous scholars, events, and reading groups, often in conjunction with the Wolf Institute. But no event has been as high profile or speaker as high powered as our memorial Hess lecturer this evening. Winona LaDuke's work has been influential on my thinking, my research, and my activism. I've included her work in my environmental justice course since the 1990s. She's also been influential on my life. Winona LaDuke visits dozens of campuses, engages with hundreds of faculty a year. 20 plus years ago, she had a conversation with me and shared her thoughts on sinking deep roots on the White Earth Reservation, the place she calls home. That conversation resonated with me. What is home to a settler? Where does one feel a sense of rootedness in place, a spot on the earth to focus one's commitment to local community and global struggle? For me, that meant Flatbush, Brooklyn. And when the opportunity to come to Brooklyn College arose, I reflected on that conversation, the legacy of which bestows upon me now the honor of introducing Winona LaDuke in my neighborhood. Winona LaDuke is an Indigenous rural development economist, scholar, activist, and farmer living and working on the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. She's the executive director of Honor the Earth. She works nationally and internationally on issues of climate change, renewable energy, and environmental justice alongside Indigenous communities. In her own community, she's the founder of the White Earth Land Recovery Project, the Anishinaabe Agricultural Institute, and the Eighth Fire Project. Globally and nationally, LaDuke is known as a leader on issues of cultural-based sustainable development, renewable energy, and sustainable food systems. LaDuke's work on food systems includes the creation of native harvest, the protection of wild rice, and the promotion of food sovereignty for reservation communities. Her work on the restoration of traditional corn varieties has received significant support from the USDA Sustainable Agricultural Research and Education and a number of private foundations. She is one of the leaders in the work of protecting Indigenous plants and heritage foods from patenting and genetic engineering. In 1994, LaDuke was nominated by Time magazine as one of America's 50 most promising leaders under 40. She was awarded the Thomas Merton Award in 1996, Ms. Woman of the Year in 1997, and the Reebok Human Rights Award, with which she began the White Earth Land Recovery Project. The White Earth Land Recovery Project has won many awards, including the prestigious 2003 International Slow Food Award for Biodiversity. A co-founder and board co-chair of the Indigenous Women's Network for 15 years, LaDuke maintains a significant role in international advocacy for Indigenous people. This includes numerous presentations at United Nations forums and involvement in opposition to mega projects impacting Indigenous communities. By 2007, LaDuke was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame, recognizing her leadership and commitment to her community. A graduate of Harvard and Antioch universities, she's written extensively on Native American and environmental issues. She's the author of 6 books, including Recovering the Sacred, All Our Relations, Last Standing Woman, the Winona Leduc Chronicles, and a brand new book, To Be a Water Protector, The Rise of Windigo Slayers. She is widely recognized for her work on environmental and human rights issues, and it is a profound honor for me to give you our Robert L. House Memorial Lecturer, Winona LaDuke.
Miigwech, thank you so much for having me today. Can you all hear me okay?
We can hear you, Winona. We're actually going to ask you to wait 1 minute because we want to show you a special performance.
Oh,
that's
really?
been created
Thank you.
in honor of this, in honor of your lecture. A student who has prepared a presentation by an Indigenous composer.
Hello everyone, my name is Elena and today I'll be performing Wood That Sings, a piece for violin solo by Brent Michael Davids. One of the main characteristics of this composition is the Scordatura. By applying this technique, the lowest string in the violin will be tuned as a lower A, simulating the bassy sound of an Apache violin. Thank you to the Wolf Institute for inviting me today, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much to Elena for that, and thank you all for your claps and snaps. And Winona, now we welcome you to the floor.
Anine, y'all good again, hearing me again? Anine Nindoe Maganaduk, hello my relatives. Benesikwe and Jinikas, Makwando Dam. Gawabani Kagish Kanaganing and Dunjaba. That tells you where I am from in the world, which is the White Earth Reservation. And I'm speaking to you from Round Lake, which is the headwaters of the Red River, which flows to Hudson Bay. And to the south of me is the headwaters of the Mississippi. So I'm at the headwaters. That's where I'm speaking to you from, kind of in the heart of the Great Lakes territory, Anishinaabe territory. So honored to be with you today. I am going to put up my PowerPoint. Can you see it? Very good. I would like to talk about what I call the Sitting Bull Plan, or the time of the seventh fire. In our Anishinaabe prophecies, we are told that during the time of the seventh fire, we will have a choice between two paths. And they say one path is well-worn, but it is scorched. And the other is not well-worn, and it is green. It is our choice upon which path to embark. And indeed, as we see catastrophes of biblical proportion, which have come around us, as we see political, social, economic turmoil and drama, we see that this is a time for change, and this is the time that we are in. So I'm going to talk about how we got here and what that change looks like. But as I begin, I show you this picture of a water protector in Duluth. In downtown Duluth. And this is a woman from our territory, and she's a water protector, and I also am a water protector. This is where I live, Awawi-Agamug, Round Lake in the middle of the White Earth Reservation, and this is from where I am speaking to you from. This is my language of 8,000 verbs. I always say we want to do things. That's why we got so many verbs. This is some art from our territory. And I like to talk about this art a lot of times. This is Roy Thomas. He has passed away, Roy Thomas Sabun. And this art is called We Are All in the Same Boat. And I kind of think that's where we are now. You know, no matter what color we are, how rich we are, how special we think we are all in the same world. In fact, we're all in the same Zoom world today for a whole set of reasons. So let us put our minds together to see what kind of future we can make for our children. That's this opportunity. But one of the reasons I show this art is I was an undergraduate at Harvard University. And if you wanted to see fine arts, you went to the Fog Museum, or maybe you went to the Gun Museum. Lots of art of fine quality at Harvard University. But if you wanted to see the art of indigenous peoples, you went to anthropology. Because somehow the valuation of our art, the valuation of our knowledge in Harvard and to this day, by most institutions is not actually there. And what I would suggest to you humbly, that the minds that got us into this problem are probably not the minds that are going to get us out of it. Might be time to look for some fresh thinking and get a little more humble, and together we can make something which is good. Together we can make a future which is beautiful, but it would take us working together. So let me talk about making America great again. I always like to talk about that because this is my idea of when America is great, is when there were 8,000 varieties of corn, tremendous agrobiodiversity, and as I had mentioned before, corn doesn't exist in nature. Corn exists in nature as teosinte. So every one of those varieties was developed by indigenous people, largely indigenous women, who were seed saving, seed collecting, because women are the ones who know how you harvest it and how it preserves and how it tastes. You don't want to keep something you don't want. And so all of those varieties were by indigenous women, far before Monsanto, Syngenta, far before Kraft and all the big agribusiness companies in the world. In fact, on a worldwide scale today, indigenous people and peasant farmers produce 70% of the world's food. We are still those ones. America was great when there were 50 million buffalo, the single largest migratory herd in the world, and they spanned the prairie region with 250 different species of grass and all kinds of biodiversity. Single largest migratory herd in the world. America was great when the skies were blackened by passenger pigeons and when you could drink the water from every stream and river. That is when America was great. And so let us not forget that, because America is full of people who have historic amnesia. America is also full of people who have ecological amnesia. But I am someone who remembers, because where I live, it is still the place where the wild things are, and we can see and hear those beings. This is my neck of the woods. This is Rice Lake just north of me, and I just came in from getting some rice off of this lake today. And this is what wild rice looks like. Monoman, one of our most sacred foods. And I say that because in our prophecies as Anishinaabe people, we were instructed to follow a shell which appeared in the sky to the place where the food grows upon the water. And that is our sacred wild rice, our most sacred food. And so for 200 years, our people have fought to protect our rice from encroachment, from dam projects, and from pipeline projects, and that battle continues. But all you have to do is take care of your lakes, take care of your ecosystems, put your prayers out and be grateful. And we still go out with 2 sticks in a canoe, 2 sticks in canoes, and take to our lakes each fall during the season of Menominee Jesus, to bring in our wild rice. So that is what we are doing in our territory now. And this is what it looks like in a lot of Indigenous territories, because indeed on a worldwide scale, where there are Indigenous peoples, there is still biodiversity. In fact, 80% of the world's biodiversity is in the territories of Indigenous peoples. And so as we have learned from this moment in time, perhaps sometimes I refer to this as the time of the bat, because as you will recall, COVID began with a bat. Now, if they had left that creature where it was supposed to be, and left that ecosystem intact, we would not have this plague and this epidemic that we have today. But the fact is that, we told you for many years, Indigenous people told y'all for many years, don't mess with Mother Nature. And now perhaps we're beginning to learn that lesson, because we need to leave the wild things where the wild things are and protect those things. And that is perhaps one of the most significant reasons to protect, ally with, and support the struggles to protect the lands and territories and waters of Indigenous people. Because we are the people who hold the world's biodiversity. And everybody who is listening to me today knows that biodiversity is life. That is life. That is where life is found. In this month, as I said, it's called Menominee Jesus. The month that follows this is called Banakweo Jesus, when the leaves fall. Gashkadno Jesus, the moon that is after that. Manitou Jesus, Soon's little spirit moon, Gishi Manitou Jesus. We have a moon in the spring called Iskigami Ziggy Jesus, which is the maple syruping moon. Then we have Wabagana Jesus, the moon when the flowers come. I thought you might like to hear my language. It is the same language as the Lenape people speak, because we are indeed relatives. We are cousins, and we came from the Lenape people. We are the same people. But in that, I don't know if you heard that exactly, but in our language, our moons are named after what is on our land and what is in our skies. Did you notice that none of our moons are named after a Roman emperor? It is possible to have an entire worldview that has nothing to do with empire. It'll be okay, just let that stuff go, not needed. Let us talk a little bit about empire. This is really in many ways the path, 2 different paths, one scorched and well-worn, and one green. Represented here by Sitting Bull and Custer. And some things history teaches us, and some things we better learn a little bit better. But that is this moment in time. So let me talk a little bit about the scorched path. That is what I call Windigo Economics. I'm gonna give a little short presentation on that, because I think we all are kind of aware of the problems we face. We face an industrial agriculture system, a mining system, which I refer to as Windigo Economics. That's to say, you keep taking stuff from the earth, not putting in your prayers and not putting things back. That's the way of a Windigo. The way of a Windigo, or a cannibal economics. We could call it capitalist economics. We could call it all kinds of things, but so long as you take more than you need and you do not leave the rest and you are not reverent, so long as you accumulate and do not return, you are participating in that system. And I call that Windigo economics. And so those systems have caused the havoc that we are in today. I don't need to show you too many more pictures of fires, but you all know what I'm talking about. The entire West Coast has been in fire for the past years, and the skies are orange over my reservation. We're facing times of catastrophes of biblical proportions. And those did not just happen because, they just happened. They happened because of a set of choices that were made by Americans, a set of choices made by world societies. This is what catastrophes of biblical proportions look like. And then we have the price tag of that and the implications of that, going up and up and up. Oh, this is only to 2012. I didn't even talk about the PG&E outage, which caused the massive campfire of last year. but we are talking about the indications of how systems begin to fail. Because the more you have climate change, the more your power is going to go out. And then you have the expense of that, which is dramatic and will increase. It's said that by this year, we'll be spending 20% of our GDP on climate change related disasters. I don't know. I didn't do the math to add up what we have going between the alphabet of hurricanes and the forest fires of the West Coast, but it is certainly significant. It is certainly significant what is happening. So it is to say that all of this stuff costs money. And as an economist, I can tell you at Harvard, they didn't talk about these externalities in the economic system, but that's what they are. And in fact, they are actually very present realities in our world. This is what the last stages of Windigo Economics look like. This is the tar sands in Alberta. The Alberta tar sands, the single dirtiest oil in the world. Single dirtiest oil in the world. Highest carbon footprint. And this is what the Canadian economy is predicated on. So you'll find that I am really not partial to my opposition to either the United States or the Canadian government. They're both equally remiss and equally committing egregious acts against not only Mother Nature and Indigenous peoples, but in fact against the world. And so this is the Canadian tar sands, and this is the heart of the battle that I am in here in northern Minnesota. And this is what that kind of behavior does to civil society. That's to say, if you act toxic in your environment, if you act toxic in your economy, you also have toxicity in your social system. This is a picture, I've shown it a couple of times this week, taken out in North Dakota. I like to talk about North Dakota because nobody talks about North Dakota. Everybody just like flies over North Dakota because it's not important. North Dakota because it's just way out there, all full of pretty much some white people and some Indians out there in North Dakota. And so most people like don't even go to North Dakota except for Standing Rock. Even AOC went to Standing Rock, and she credits us at Standing Rock with helping her think more about running for office, and we are grateful to her forever. So this is a picture in North Dakota, and what has happened in North Dakota is with the out-migration of white people, basically Germans and Norwegians and Scandinavians to places like New York City and California and Minneapolis. What has been left in North Dakota is a lot of older, very, very conservative and afraid non-Indian people and a whole bunch of Indians, and then a state which is now entirely under regulatory capture by oil companies and a whole bunch of other toxicity. So in the middle of that, some neo-Nazis moved into a little town in North Dakota, declared themselves mayor, bought a bunch of the town up, and these women are Lakota women. They trained me, those women. Woman on the right, that's Phyllis Young. The second one in the middle is Madonna Thunderhawk. I worked for her when I was 18 years old. She was scary then. Let me tell you what, she's scarier now. And then that's Mabel Ann Chasing Hawk, that's her sister. And then I don't know that sister in the white shirt. But those Lakota grandmothers went and captured the flag of those Nazis in North Dakota, and then they burned that flag. That's what civil society looks like, and that's what happens when some people have to stand up to dysfunction in civil society. So what I'm saying is like, as a woman I admire so much, Erin Dottie Roy says, when we walk through that portal, we do not want to drag this with us. We do not want to drag avarice and hatred and prejudice and dirty skies, dirty rivers, toxic thinking. We want to move through clean. We need to make those breaks and make that transition. So this is what the scorched earth looks like in my territory, proposals for tar sands pipelines. The first pipeline was the pipeline that they proposed from the Bakken oil fields. That did not happen. And when we defeated the Enbridge company, the largest pipeline company in the world, in 2016, they financed the Dakota Access Pipeline and put their money out there because they figured that resistance would be less in North Dakota. But my reservation is white earth. And as you see, for 7 years, we've been fighting pipelines and they still have no pipeline. And we will stand strong because this is the end of the fossil fuel era. And I want to be clear to all of you out there, I'm not opposed to pipes. I like pipes for water and sewer. And there's certainly in a country with a D in infrastructure, that's what we need, is pipes for water and sewer, and not pipes for fossil fuel companies at the end of the fossil fuel era, when Exxon is no longer on the S&P, no longer in the Dow, and the price of oil has dropped to minus $38 a barrel. Might be time to rethink what the next economy looks like. This is what the people look like who fight Enbridge. This is my sisters, this is some of my relatives, and these are women that are water protectors, and I am proud to call myself one. This is what it looks like when the military comes into your communities. This is Standing Rock 2016, 4 scant years ago, when this all occurred. And this was about 4 years ago, almost exactly to the day. And this is what it looks like when they bring in the military for your community, when you are water protectors. And they bring in the military to protect the rights of a multinational corporation. And when you realize, as an American citizen or as an Indigenous person, that the rights of corporations supersede the rights of people. And we realize that that is absolutely wrong. So in this case, what I have is an MRAP on the right, a mine-resistant armored personnel carrier, and on the left, something called an LRAD, a long-range acoustic device. Those 2 pieces of equipment were surplused by the US military and were brought to North Dakota. Stutsman County is there, and they brought that over to Standing Rock. And so this problem of surplusing military equipment to civilian police forces is something that we have seen as a huge problem in a democracy like ours. And we have seen it across the country. It was discontinued under Obama, but it had continued under Obama initially. And then, of course, it was reestablished by the Trump administration. And this is what the courage of our people is, you know. I don't know who this sister is, but I love her and I love this picture, you know, because someone's got to stand and face the enemy. And that'd be a lot of women. That'd be a lot of men. That'd be a lot of people. So this is kind of the end of the scorched path. That is my argument. When civil society has been consumed, as we see it now, with the unrest, when the statues begin to fall, when the cities begin to burn, perhaps it is time to change our ways. That would be my humble suggestion. This is the end of the tar sands era. This is pipelines intended for you, but in this period, we are running out of tar sands oil, and it is time to move to the next economy. Now, some would call this next economy the Green New Deal. You know, I've never had the privilege of meeting AOC, but I certainly do admire her. And I admire the movement and the structural change that is underway in this country to bring on the next economy. And so let us talk about what I would refer to as the Sitting Bull Plan. And I call it the Sitting Bull Plan because he was a great political leader, a Lakota leader, a Hunk Papa, actually from Standing Rock. He was assassinated on Standing Rock Reservation after the Battle of the Little Bighorn, which he won and defeated Custer. He was the chief who defeated Custer. And after that, he was assassinated. But what he said is, let us put our minds together to make a good future for our children. Let us put our minds together to make a good future for our children. Let us talk about that. The first thing I want to talk about is food. So this is my tribe, my reservation, study done, 12 years ago, but very little has changed. And there we realized that you got to quit hemorrhaging. You know, as we look at the economies in rural areas and the economies in many other areas, what you see is that there is a difference between an import-export trade business, and then there is a hemorrhaging of your entire economy, where that which you earn in your reservation goes immediately to off-reservation border towns because you do not have a local food system. You do not control your energy system. You do not control your medical system. You do not control your housing system. And so if we are to make resilient economies, we need to regain control and some stability and relocalize. Because of the many things we have learned in the time of the bat or during the COVID pandemic, one of the things we perhaps learned most quickly is it took 72 days to move out. It took 3 weeks to move the virus out to almost 72 countries. And that is what a globalized economy does. Things move really quick. And perhaps we want to think about that globalization. You know, we've always been told that big is best. You know, the economies of scale argument and all in economics class. Well, it turns out that the economics of scale argument is not actually a resilient plan, and nor is it a plan that is stable when there is a big crisis, because it cannot change quickly. So we work at relocalizing our economy. We spend a quarter of our money on food, a quarter money on energy. And both of those is what we are trying to relocalize on my reservation. This is one of our squashes that we have grown. And I always think of squashes as promise because they are full of seeds. This has 1,600 seeds in an average squash. You know, if that is not about promise, I don't know what is. You know, there's a Zapatista saying is that they buried us. They thought they buried us, but they forgot that we were seeds. Because indeed, we are seeds. We are seeds. This is this year's harvest. So this is my Lakota squash varieties in my greenhouse made of upcycled windows from my friend's house. And this is my field being put in. And what I'm interested in mostly is pre and post petroleum agriculture. And that's to say that indigenous heritage varieties from wherever they are in the world are pre-industrial agriculture, pre-petroleum agriculture. What has been called widely conventional agriculture is in fact an aberration of agriculture. It is not actually conventional agriculture. It's not traditional agriculture. It's fossil fuels agriculture, which has existed, only for the past 50 years. And so I'm interested in varieties that did not need fossil fuels to keep them happy, did not want them. And so what I grow specifically is varieties that are pre and post fossil fuels. And this is this year's Lakota squash varieties. And this is our horse-drawn agriculture, in this case, pony-drawn agriculture on our reservation. Karen Knowles putting it in the middle of Ponsford Prairie. This is our corn restoration project. And we've been growing different varieties of corn. I often tell the story that my father came to see me when I was an undergraduate at Harvard. And when he came to see me, he was kind of old school Indian guy. I was, studying economics and government. And, I was doing all this cool stuff, writing all these important essays, doing all these seminars. And he said, I don't want to hear your philosophy if you can't grow corn. He said it in a really kind and loving way. But thank you. I'm giving a lecture. Bye. That was my son. He didn't know I was giving a lecture from up here. This is my friend Will Allen. He's like the rock star of urban agriculture. That's what I got to say about that brother. He's from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and for many years he directed something called Growing Power. He has been a very good role model to me, and today he's doing more work. But in his work, what he was able to do in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, was to grow 1 million pounds of produce on 3 acres. And he grew that for schools in the Milwaukee area. So I say this to you as we rebuild our cities and build resilient cities and resilient communities, that it is time to localize our food systems. And if we can grow food in our urban areas, we should grow food. We should take some of our places and turn them into green fields. That is what we need to do in our urban areas. But, so relocalizing your food can happen in many, many areas, not just on my reservation. And then the next example I want to talk about is energy. The next economy of energy is going to need to be a little bit more efficient. Now, this is an older chart. There's a 2016. I don't know why I didn't put that one in here. But the point is pretty much the same. This is like a really complicated chart, but if you get through it, what you realize is that we waste about 60% of our energy between point of origin and point of consumption. And that's because we have big centralized energy systems of coal and dams and all kind of stuff. And some of them are pretty inefficient, like 80 years old. Maybe start with some of our coal generation. Some old, like as old as my mother. My mother is 87, and there's a coal plant as old as my mother here, in Minnesota. That's an old coal plant. My mother's great, but a coal plant shouldn't be 87 years old. It should be retired. That's what should happen. But what we have is aging energy infrastructure in this country. In fact, we have a D in infrastructure in this country, and we have a D in energy infrastructure in this country. Now, those of us who live in the United States, we all thought we signed up for a first world country, but actually, we aren't living in a first world country in terms of infrastructure, particularly the kind of infrastructure that we need for our communities. And so in this case, what we have is we lose all of this power between point of origin and point of consumption. And so people say renewable energy, you can't meet present demand with renewable energy. And to them I respond, why would you want to meet present demand? Present demand makes no sense. Present demand is really inefficient. In fact, you all know because you live in New York City and you have gas mains that blow up. That shows leaks in your energy system. And so what we want is an energy system that is functional, and we don't want to meet unnecessary demand. In fact, what we also do not want to do is we also do not want to be in a situation where we find that we are producing energy for dead-end industries, like the tar sands. That'd be a perfect example. Or producing energy for really, really old mines in northern Minnesota. New mining projects that are less than 1% ore and are the single largest energy consumers in their region. We don't want to produce energy for stupid projects. We want to produce energy for communities. We want to produce energy for people. We want to produce energy so that we can be healthy. not for Windigo Economics. So I say that we can meet many of our needs through conservation, that's called megawatts, and then also renewable. This is what we're doing in my community. It's called 8 Fire Solar. A few years ago, we put up all these solar thermal panels on our reservation. Now, it turns out that solar thermal is this heating process where you put it on the south side wall like this. This is my housing project in my village. And so what you have is a 50-year-old housing project. We have ancient housing stock, of course. But on that, we have put up these solar thermal panels. And so it's a pretty simple technology. And it's put on a south-facing wall. And when you put this on the south-facing wall, it reduces your heating bill by about 20%. Now, where I live in Minnesota, it's really cold in the wintertime. It's like -20, -30, quite easily. But it's sunny. And so if you could reduce your heating bill by having a solar thermal panel on the south side of your house, that seems like a really smart thing to do. And then you have to heat less. So, you know, where I live, it's called fuel poverty. Fuel poverty is when you have to decide if you're going to eat or heat in the wintertime. And so my goal is to avoid that misery for my people by putting up solar thermal panels, and we make them here in my reservation. This is some of my team. I just saw them just a little while ago. This is some visitors that came. They're very nice. They really liked our work on the reservation, but this is where they are made. And this is who makes those solar thermal panels. There's a bunch of Indian guys from the res who make them. Wind generation potential from tribes is also very significant. Now, I don't know why I don't have a full US map, but you know, basically the potential is that Indian reservations, I don't know why, but we're the windiest place in the country. Go figure that. And so because we are so windy, it seems like a really good mark of an export economy. So for instance, the Fort Berthold Reservation in North Dakota, those guys have 17,000 times more wind capacity than they could use. You know, if I had 17,000 times more wind capacity than I could use, I'd probably make sure I powered something, you know? And so what we are looking at is the integration of renewable energy into the next economy. And that is the work that we're doing here on the White Earth Reservation. And one of the ways you integrate it is with this brilliant idea called solutionary rail. Now, solutionary rail was developed out of the Northwest. You can look it up, solutionary rail. And it's a really, you know, we all live in the same country, and you in New York have trains. We don't have trains here in Minnesota. We have a train that goes by like, you know, at 3 a.m. and both ways, if I wanted to jump on a passenger Amtrak train. In fact, they say that the US train system is about the equivalent, you know, I think that James Kunstler said it, and he referred to the train system in the United States as being an embarrassment to Bulgaria. Not a good train system. You know, first world country. And so if we are talking about transforming infrastructure in this country, we need to transform the train system. That's the foundational piece of infrastructure that we need to make work. And there's a number of reasons for that. You know, moving freight by train is the most efficient, energy efficient way to move freight. You know, part of what we need to do is probably move less stuff though. That's part of the whole discussion of what the next economy looks like, is you need to get a little more local and not move in so much stuff from China that you don't need. That'd be just a small example. You know, maybe 2 cell phones a year instead of 5, something like that. You know, I'm just saying, you know, we all know the world we live in of a huge amount of plastic produced products that are coming in on these trains. And so what we want to do is we find that trains are the most efficient way to move things. And in addition to that, if you operate electric trains versus a diesel train, it is even more efficient. And so what we want to do is electrify the rail system of this country so that we would be like, in fact, most other countries that have efficient train systems. This is what the future looks like. Because if you have an electric train, that is about twice as efficient as a diesel train. And so the idea of transforming transport in this country to being something that is efficient is the idea that is essential to infrastructure in the future. And in this system, we can power these trains through direct current. And we can gather renewable energy in the regions. As you see here, railroads have taken their tolls through our reservations. And a lot of these reservations have a railroad that runs right through them. Railroad right-of-ways appropriated and stolen by railroad barons from my tribes. And also, we have the renewable energy to power the rails. And so visionary people would figure out how to make a system that is electric and that is powered on renewables. Evolutionary rail. And then you make local energy. So the woman here in the slide, her name is Winona Leduc, and she is from the middle of the tar sands. Her village has been deeply affected and impacted by tar sands oil spills, devastating to her community. You know, the fact is that I live in the deep north, but north of me, the north is even deeper. And that is to say, racism and structural racism and poverty. 151 tribal villages to the north of me have water advisories and do not have potable water in them. This is first world countries without potable water in our villages for decades, some of them. This is her village, which is one of those villages. And in her village, their health clinic was powered by a diesel generator. And, you know, it seems like in the middle of the tar sands, you should have the power or justice, equity, would look like that you actually had power for your own village. And so for her master's thesis at the University of Victoria, let me repeat this again. For her master's thesis at the University of Victoria, she installed 20 kilowatts of solar in her village, Winona Leduc. And I say that because a lot of us write dissertations and then we defend them and we do more literature searches, but some people put up solar projects for their academic work. So it is possible, and it is the time is now for that kind of transition and that kind of vision. So I had to do the same thing. This is a solar project in my village of Pine Point that powers part of the needs of my tribal school to which my grandchildren attend. And this is what big solar looks like on the Navajo Reservation. And the Navajo Reservation is called a Kayenta Solar Project and is 27 megawatts of power. And the reason that this is very significant is that the Navajo Nation, in a textbook case of colonialism, at one point had 42 uranium mines, 10 uranium mills, 5 coal-fired power plants, and 4 coal strip mines on it, inside the Navajo Nation, powering every city in the Southwest, including Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Albuquerque, Phoenix, all powered by Navajo and Hopi people. And at the same time, during that year, those people, 85% of their houses had no electricity. Welcome to Indian country. And so now what we have is the closure of coal-fired generators across this country, and particularly on the Navajo Reservation in the Southwest, where aging coal-fired generators are being closed down one after the other. And so in their tribe, they have the infrastructure for energy distribution. And so this is how you use the infrastructure for energy distribution in the next economy. You put up solar on your brownfields. And this is my village. One of the many murals we painted in my village, I was inspired by the art of Balmy Alley. And there I found, you know, an entire set of murals. And so that village that has the solar thermal panels on it now has 12 murals, and we are still painting. Because I believe, as many people do, that if you make your world beautiful, you will feel better. And then this is my work in my farm. And most of this lecture, my lectures have been from my farm, which is where I live. And this is Winona's hemp farm. And as I was telling students earlier today, I've been a hemp farmer for 5 years. I have a state of Minnesota hemp permit. I cannot grow anything with THC in it, but I can grow fiber hemp, and that is my interest. And I was out in my field today, and today they brought in from the edge of the field a 9-foot tall hemp plant for me. And this is who brought it in. This is 2 years ago, our hemp field. This is some of my relatives and some of my family. And this is what fiber hemp looks like. And just to be clear, you know, the word canvas comes from cannabis. The word canvas comes from cannabis. And what I'm interested in doing is rebuilding the hemp industry in this country. Because I know that 100 years ago, we had a choice between a carbohydrate economy and a hydrocarbon economy. A carbohydrate economy and a hydrocarbon economy, and we made the wrong choice. And so now what I want to do is rebuild a carbohydrate economy. And the foundation of that is hemp. Hemp can replace most of your textiles. In fact, you know, that which I'm wearing today is mostly cotton. I have a little bit of hemp on, but let us be honest. Most of us wear fossil fuels. The fact is that everything, a polyester, a nylon, most of us are walking around in fossil fuels, and those are full of microfibers. And those microfibers end up in all of our water. They end up in all of our ecosystems, and they are deadly things. And so that at a certain point, we need to move out of wearing oil. We need to move out of eating oil and slathering it on our food systems, and we need to move out of using oil. And so what you do is you transition to something like hemp. And in that, you find that hemp can replace all of those different fibers, and also can replace cotton. And it can, and also can replace a lot of the trees used for many things. And it can biodegrade, it can be used for many different containers. Anything you can make out of plastic, you can also make out of hemp. This is some of our hemp from a couple of years ago. This is a wigwam with our hemp from last year. This is how you make concrete out of hemp. You know, I'm talking to some people who live around a lot of concrete. I know that. So you can make that out of hemp, and it breathes, and it also sequesters carbon. If I was gonna, when we rebuild the Northwest from those fires, we're gonna rebuild it with some sustainable building. And this is my hemp plant here. These are my cannabis plants. These are my plants that we grow mostly for medicinal varieties. Now, I showed this picture earlier today because this is where most of my hemp equipment comes from. With the criminalization of the hemp economy, it turns out that you cannot buy a decorticator in this country. You can't build a hemp economy in this country. You have to import your equipment. And where your equipment comes from is, in fact, your equipment does, in fact, come from China. And so I love international trade. I love globalization, but not this. At a certain point, you got to begin to rebuild an industry so that you we make things in this country. We rebuild the Rust Belt, and we put people to work in manufacturing the things that are needed in our community. And so this is a perfect example of it as well. This is the port of Duluth, which is the furthest inland port in this country. And at the port of Duluth, what you see coming in at the port of Duluth is, in fact, wind turbine parts coming in from Europe. Because while we are building a renewable energy economy, all the parts of that economy are not in this country. They are, in fact, being imported from Europe or imported from China. So in the new green revolution, in the eighth fire, in the Green New Deal, the Sitting Bull Plan, we will need to make these things here, because that is what one would do if we wanted to have a resilient economy, have a few choices. In these moments that we're in, you know, I know that some people lack faith. I know that some people are so scared. I know that. And I know that we can also make change, and we can also believe, and we can put our good hearts and our good minds together to transform things. So this is the work of Dr. Emoto. He's from Japan, and he studies water crystals. And in his study of water crystals, I didn't really know much about water crystals, but every crystal has a different shape. You know, they're like people. They have their own diversity. And in that, what he found is that when he froze water from different places, you know, where there is pollution, the water crystal looks sad. It looks confused. You know, and then some places, when there's spring water, the water crystal looks like we would imagine a snowflake. And then what he found, you can see it in the bottom right-hand corner, is that after you pray, after you sing, after you speak positive affirmations to water crystals, you can change their formation. You can change their formation. And so what I say to you is you know, I want to say pray hard and work hard. Pray hard and work hard. That'd be a good plan, you know, and through that, you know, we will pray for recovering our covenant, our relationship with all our relatives, whether they have wings or fins or roots or paws. And we'll pray that we do our best and we have some pity from the Creator for us. And as I look at the opportunities for that in terms of public policy, I am often reminded of the need to change the institutions, the legal institutions of this country, not only from the punitive justice system, which has put so many people of color behind bars for so long, but also to a system of justice which reaffirms rights which make sense. The idea that was crystallized and clarified at Standing Rock and in so many other locations, that the rights of corporations have come to supersede the rights of individuals, must be changed. That must be changed. Now, what has happened is, of course, that corporations are considered natural persons under the law, and so they have standing in court. But everybody who is listening today knows that a corporation is not a person. If a corporation was a person, it would have a soul, and a corporation does not have a soul. And so what we know is that we must transform these systems so that rights are affirmed and protected for those beings who matter. And so in the leadership of Evo Morales from Bolivia, we found the first constitutional transformation which affirmed the rights of nature as a part of the Bolivian Constitution. That Mother Earth has a right to exist, has the right to not be contaminated, has the right to continue giving life. Those are all rights, and those should be reaffirmed by nation states and by civil society. So as I think of where we are going, there is so much opportunity to make change. Arundhati Roy has spoken clearly in her writing, and she has said and noted pandemics cause societies to stop in their tracks. That is the history of pandemics on a worldwide scale, and this one is no different. We have changed how we live. That is why we are having a Skype lecture or a Zoom lecture. We have changed the world that we live in. And what we know is that change is inevitable. It's a question of who controls the change. The changes that are going to need to be ahead, we will need to take a hand in making those changes if we want to see a just world. That is our opportunity. That is our privilege to be the people that are here now. The people have the opportunity to make that beautiful future. Miigwech, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your many words and thoughts. And we have a few questions that have come in that I might try to string together. One is an easy one that we have Professor St. Paul asking about your name and whether Winona has a meaning.
Winona is a firstborn daughter, and Winona's parents fell from the sky. The firstborn woman of the Anishinaabe people is Winona. And then Winona lived, and she made love to the west wind, and then delivered those who have taught most of us the lessons of this world. So I'm named after that Winona, and it means firstborn daughter in Ojibwe, and also in Lakota and Dakota, firstborn daughter.
Thank you for that. We have, I think, two related questions. One is from Gregory asking about how each of us are implicated. You talked about how each of us is implicated in environmental problems, and asking about strategies for freeing ourselves to start on a new path. And then Connor Thomas Reed in the chat is asking, we talked about this a little bit at one of the events, but what we can do to indigenize universities specifically, given that that's where this Zoom virtual talk is located virtually.
Well, there is in every arena we can transform. So we begin because we must also transform ourselves. And so we have all spent much time reflecting on our situation since March. We have all reflected on things that we have not reflected on mostly because we were so busy going. That's my assessment. I am with you, So I can no longer go to town. I rarely go to town. I didn't like it anyway. But, how do you relocalize? How do you consume less? How do you make choices that are choices that affirm that which you believe? Where is your farmer's market? How do you build institutions? That is what we are doing in our households, in our extended families, and in our villages. So, we begin with that. But then also we know that we must aggregate that power into larger arenas for this transformation to be necessary. And, during these times, we have certainly buckled down and stepped up in northern Minnesota. And I encourage everybody else to do the same, because now is that time to make those changes, and the opportunity is clearly here.
Thank you. And we have a question from Bruce McIntyre, and I know you have a whole book coming out about this, asking you to say a little bit more about Windigo Economics.
Right. Okay, so the first time I heard the term Windigo Economics was from this native guy, Chief Johnny out in British Columbia, or what they call British Columbia. And he said to me, he said, you know, we were fighting logging, they were fighting clear-cut logging out there in their territory. And he said, you know, sitting down and talking to the Canadian government is like sitting down and talking to a cannibal. You can make it as much small talk as you want, but in the end, you know exactly what they're thinking. You know, and so I feel like that's pretty much the way it is. Indigenous people, we have land, we have water, we have things that we have held on to for 500 years and they still want them. And so, you know, there's a good deal of experience with Windigos in our territory, and we have also killed Windigos. And Windigo is a cannibal. And my people have a long history of Windigo slaying, you know. And then, so what I see is the economics of a cannibal is one which creates Superfund sites. The economics of a cannibal is one which lays to waste ecosystems and moves on. The economics of a cannibal is one which creates garbage dumps the size of Texas in the middle of the ocean. The economics of a cannibal is one that fishes out one region after another. And so, you know, it's clearly the practice, and it's late stage capitalism, but it was, you know, early stages of colonialism and imperialism, the extractive economy. And you know, it is clear that doesn't work. So.
And the irony, of course, is that the colonizers were calling the indigenous people cannibals when they first came, right? Yamoka, would you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Hi, so I had a question about conventional agriculture. I wanted to know how can we transform it and make it more restorative?
Well, you know, it's going to take a little work. I'm working on some farms up here that are potato farms. I think that hemp is part of the answer because of the scale that is needed in hemp. And I think that, you know, if they can go organic in hemp, they could, this would be a good start because they got to bioremediate. You know, you need to do it industry by industry. You need to demand higher standards. You need to look at CAFOs, confined animal feeding operations. You know, we need to uphold, and we need to quit wasting food. Americans waste 40% of their food. You know, so the industrial agriculture system supports a really, really dysfunctional food system.
And Professor Lewis has a related question asking, can you feed your family and community from the White Earth Farm? What items do you grow there, and what do you need to get from outside?
Yeah, this is an interesting question that I am working on. And so I think that our extended family, maybe 40 people, is what, you know, is my extended family of responsibility, and those I feed. And so we definitely could feed most of our food from here, you know, and then local, like I think I was explaining earlier, you know, I live near the Amish, and so they're big into dairy products. I get my dairy products from the Amish. Don't mess around with dairy myself. And then, you know, they also have these like local co-ops, which are super interesting that the Amish have created. I'm interested in Amish economics because there's something to be said for that scale and the thinking behind Amish economics, and in our region at least. And then, you know, we have wild rice, and I have 120 pounds in my truck right now. And then I have corn. I have 2 acres of corn, 3 acres of corn, significant amount, weight, you know, enough for some of my village, most of our feasts. And then I grow corn, beans, squash, potatoes. I have about 2,000 pounds of potatoes, purple potatoes. You can buy them in New York. I'm going to be selling them through Heritage Food in New York. Some of my high-end stuff. We'll eat the white potatoes. You guys can have some of the purples too. And then I actually have a coffee roasting company because I decided that if I was going to have one addiction, it would be coffee. I'd stick right to it. And you couldn't get a good coffee anywhere in northern Minnesota, and so we have a roaster on the other side of the lake. And it's called Spotted Horse Coffees, and I don't want to say we drink most of the coffee, but we sure drink a lot of the coffee right here on the reservation.
Other questions? I know folks were putting a lot in the chat about their inspirations and relating the talk to their own study.
Do you want to know what else we eat? Oh, deer, all kinds of deer up here, and turkey, wild turkey, and we're raising some pigs. Actually, I think you'll all be entertained. I'm raising 3 white male pigs. One's named Donald. One's named Ronald. We have another guy like that, and one's named Al for Al Monaco at Enbridge. I just thought I'd raise some white male pigs. But you know what? Raising white male pigs during COVID was really hard because the pigs were sickly. I should have raised heritage pigs. White male pigs are not healthy. I learned this. Anyway, and then we raise, then we fish. I live on a lake. I'm about to go set a net and get a bunch of fish in. And so we eat, we eat a lot of local food, and then we harvest all over. I was looking at, I don't think I brought it up, wheat lechote? Is that how you call it? It's right. Yeah, I just picked some off of my cornfield. I was like, well, I'm gonna make that with some eggs.
Excellent. All right, I think we have, I'll group all these questions together. If you can talk a little bit, I think the lactose intolerance question might be about Indigenous traditional diets, and a question about specifically the struggles you're facing with Cargill, and a question which I think might be nice to end on the relationship between individual action and collective action.
Yeah, what was the first one?
The first was about indigenous diets relative to, you said something about milk and lactose
yeah.
intolerance.
I mean, so I was laughing because, they have all these fancy diet plans, the keto diet or whatever it is, and then the paleo diet. I was like, I guess I'm a paleo. I'm pretty much a paleo, That's just to say, a lot of traditional varieties and not a lot of bread. I don't eat a lot of bread. Because, it turns out, I mean, as we were talking yesterday, the day before, about the food system, I mean, Minnesota's the home of the Pillsbury Doughboy, and we all look like that, right? So I just feel like we need to move on from that stuff because that was a bad idea. So how do you rebuild grain systems that make sense? I mean, the white bread, it makes no sense whatsoever. So I try to minimize that, and I have mostly, my own, different varieties. And yeah, I am pretty lactose intolerant, but I make goat milk cheese, and that seems to be fine.
And are you fighting Cargill right now? Are you?
Oh no, I'm not fighting Cargill. My two enemies in this point in my life are the Enbridge Corporation, the single largest pipeline company in the world, and still no pipeline. And if you want to come visit in Minnesota next summer, if they get a permit, there's going to be great camping. I'm just going to say, if you miss Standing Rock, spectacular camping in Minnesota. 300 miles of pipe not built, all kinds of campgrounds right along the pipeline. And then, of course, we have the company, it's called RDO Offit, and that's the potato company. And if you go to the Honor the Earth website, we're just starting to we just filed our brief to see if we can stop them from moving into our village. And they overspray our village. And I began work on that, and we have just begun to roll out our battle plan, but we will defeat them. We will move them off, but they should just make organic potatoes. I don't know what they're doing. If they went organic, I wouldn't dislike them so much, but we will see. They are talking to me, but we intend to continue that battle. Now, what was the second? I got the food and that, and then individual activism. Was that really the third? The
relationship between individual action and collective action.
It's an interesting thing. I just try to do my best every day. That's what I say. And it's not easy. I live with a bunch of boys right now because they all COVID homeschool quarantined with Auntie Winona. And do you know what it is like living with 4 14-year-old boys? That's like not fun many days. There's a lot of cleaning up. And I was like, why did you do that? And they make no sense. So the point is that there's a struggle in my own house on, the recycling, wasting, what the heat will be coming from, the relationship between the wood that they cut and the fact that they need cut wood to heat the house. They'll be cold. Don't cut the wood, you'll be cold. my point is that, you know, I have that own struggle in my family. So don't think that everybody listens to mom. Some of them do, you know, but you got to keep working on that. And I work on it myself. I mean, until now, I had a very high carbon footprint. I flew around, but they have outlawed the magic carpets, and I can no longer fly. You know, so it is, I'm grateful to be able to visit with you, but, you know, so I work on every facet. You know, I work on every facet. And then, you know, I realize that the bigger picture, like I try to keep my own house clean. I'm trying to clean up my own house. And when I quit traveling, I discovered many things that were located in my house that I did not know that they were still there, and they needed to move along. So I say I keep trying to clean up my own house, and then in that process, you know, I look out there, I sleep better. I know in my heart I'm doing my best, and I face my enemy and I say, clean up your house too, and let's make a better future. You know, because I know that, you know, there are many ways to change things, and that we need to provide the leadership and the vision for that. Because there was no vision and no leadership from the power structure that is. And it is our opportunity to stand up because their systems are failing. So let us make something beautiful. Thank you again so much for your time today.
Thank you all. If everyone can do you can do your virtual claps, your visual claps and applause. And we have one more event tomorrow morning. But everyone has been talking about how the information that you shared with us this week has been inspiring, and people are going to carry it through and continue to talk about these issues. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for the honor of being with you, Miigwech.